Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just want to say I do have confidence in our election staff and our election commissioner. I think we're doing a great job in Sedgwick County. I think we've set the standard, set the bar very high in our state on how elections should be ran, and I have total confidence in our processes and procedures and our staff and our equipment. And frankly, one of the things that bothers me about this entire discussion is that it kind of comes at us with the assumption that there's a problem to be solved. If you read the information from the Center for Tech and Civic Life, specifically, it says the purpose of the grant funds is they must be used exclusively for the public purpose of planning and operating safe and secure election administration in Sedgwick County in 2020. That's pretty specific. And so let me just say up front, we have appropriated funds. We listen to the election office if they have needs. We want to know them. I would say we want to know what the long-term plan is for retiring election equipment and replacing that over time. I know we may have budget challenges going forward, but we need to know what the plan is, and we need to be able to plan ahead over periods of years to have the funds necessary to replace and add equipment as needed. Let's talk about a little bit. I appreciate the fact that, you know, there was information given to the election office in early September. I don't normally read election news, but I went and looked, and sure enough, this whole thing started around the 1st of September. Nationwide, there was announcements, and there was a lot of credit given to Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, and so that's not something I was aware of. And when it came to us on October the 1st, which again was last Thursday, there was reference made to the Center for Tech and Civic Life. I didn't take time to go look them up and find out who they were. I was surprised when I found out through a news story from the Wichita Eagle. The headline says, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg's money will help run Sedgwick County 2020 elections. Well, that's pretty alarming. I have received some very concerning emails from people, and I think that's rightfully so. There's concerns about who is influencing elections, and I agree with Commissioner Lehman. I don't think there's actually anything from this Center for Tech and Civic Life that I think is partisan advantage about this grant. I don't think there's anything happening here that would give either party any type of advantage because of this money. But there is a connection to Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg in terms of where does the money actually come from originally. I mean, I also say that it is our duty as commissioners to fund elections. It's one of our core functions of Sedgwick County government. We have levied tax dollars, and we have appropriated funds for the sole purposes of running elections in Sedgwick County. We have been offered through the government this Help America Vote Act additional funds from the Secretary of State, which I understand is going to be used to enhance our plan, our strategic plan for this election specifically. And that's great, and I support that. We've already placed a number of ballot boxes throughout Sedgwick County as a result of that grant from the state of Kansas. I believe we've also, and I know the commissioner's on the line, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've also purchased or have a plan to purchase ballot printers so we can print ballots at the poll sites if they're needed. If there's a run on a ballot style that's not available and there's people want to vote by paper, we need to be able to have a paper ballot, a traditional paper ballot at that location. They could print a paper ballot using that ballot printer. I believe that's the purpose. But nevertheless, we have received those funds, and they are doing some good things. Second of all, we as a large county have also received nearly $100 million in CARES funds, and some of that money is being utilized for elections as well. And so we have money available through several different resources to take care of our needs at the election office. So having said all that, going on down in the details of what the Center for Tech and Civic Life say, they state specifically, again, it's about the 2020 election, general election of 2020 in Sedgwick County, in terms of our award. It goes on down, it says that we can use it for no other purpose. By the way, we don't have someone like Whit O'Brien holding our hand on this one. If we do it wrong, there's a potential consequence. It says here in their letter to us that the grantee, that's us, has indicated that the amount of the grant shall be expended on the following specific election administration needs. Quote, says ballot drop boxes. Again, we've already got some. I don't know how many more we would need, and if we have time to place those and advertise the location of those, where they would go. I don't know how many more we would need. It says poll worker recruitment funds. That's probably fine. Hazard pay, we've already approved that. We'll essentially use the word appropriate. We've already appropriated a $2 pay increase for our poll workers and supervising judges. And/or training expenses, polling place rental, and cleaning expenses for early voting on election day, temporary staffing, voting materials in languages other than English, and election administration equipment. And that's pretty, that last little phrase there is quite vague. It doesn't tell us exactly what that means. In the letter, in the email I got from Tom last night at 8:13 p.m., it clarifies we're going to spend this money on 100 express vote machines. That's $423,000. One of my concerns is, are we going to be able to reorder those and receive those, unpackage them, assemble them if necessary, program them, test them, and place them in poll sites before 26 days from now? That's a pretty big requirement. Also, 70 ballot on-demand printers. Again, this enhances, I think, what we've already purchased or have said we would purchase. Again, it talks about the hazard pay. Again, it's very clear in here that this is for things that are not currently appropriated. So I'm concerned about the fact we've already made a decision to fund this through other means, and yet now we're going to switch the source of funding from what we already decided to this. That's $83,000. And on it goes, there's a space rental for storage of additional equipment, $20,000. So we buy lots of new equipment, we have to have a place to store it. And then promotion of early voting ballot drop boxes and other language materials, which I think we're already doing. And then operating supplies, that's $93,000, and it's not defined exactly what that would be. I would say if we need anything to operate this election, I hope we already have a plan to appropriate those things we need to operate this election. My point is this: even if you subtract out the equipment and look at the other items on this list, you're down to about $200,000 out of the $800,000 we've been offered. It goes on down in items 8 and 9 of the contract. It says this grant may not supplant previously appropriated funds. The grantee shall not reduce the budget of the election commissioner or fail to appropriate or provide previously budgeted funds to the election department for the term of this grant. It says any amount supplanted, reduced, or not provided in contravention of this paragraph shall be repaid to CTCL up to the total amount of this grant. It says they may ask for the return of all or part of the grant funds if it determines in its sole judgment that we have done it wrong. My point is, we don't have Whit O'Brien. This is happening extremely quick. I would just say this: if we are going to go forward, there needs to be an affirmative vote by this commission to take on this risk. I think it sends the wrong message that we are using, if you will, private funds from organizations such as this to fund our election. It's unnecessary. We've already appropriated funds. We're already on top of it. I think our staff is doing a great job. We have a tremendous strategic plan. We're executing that plan flawlessly. People in Sedgwick County can rest assured we have a safe and secure election going forward. This money is a lot of money. We purchased equipment back in 2015, I think it was. We spent about $7 million on election equipment, and we need to have a plan on how to do that every so many years. This is a great opportunity for our future equipment. But let's be clear, this mission statement specifically addresses the 2020 general election of Sedgwick County. And I think there's risk in doing this, and then up to them to decide whether or not we've done it wrong, and then require us to pay that money back with property tax funds on stuff I'm not sure we would even buy if we had our own money on the table. So it's easy to make decisions to spend money in 26 days using other people's money, but understand this puts our own money at risk. So to the issue of, is this a partisan issue? I don't know that it is, but this is a lot of money. And let me just say the reason this got accepted, I appreciate you, Tom, Manager Stoltz, appreciate your effort on this. I know no one does everything 100% the way commissioners expect, but you have emergency powers and you have the right to approve this. But it is a very different way of funding in the elections, and I have grave concerns that this one sends the wrong message to our people, our constituents, our voters, that we needed Mark Zuckerberg to solve a problem we don't have. So I'm going to oppose this. In fact, I think there needs to be an affirmative vote to accept this grant. And the default by this commission should be that we don't accept the grant unless there's a vote by the commission to do so. And if I need to make a motion to say that, I will do that. But I would hope that someone else will make a motion. If they want to accept this money, please make a motion to accept the funds so that I may vote no on that motion. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Howell. Commissioner Cruz will say something, but you've said quite a bit. I think it's a little disingenuous that you quoted $423,000 in vote machines from an email we received at 8 o'clock last night, and you said, can we get them or not? If you read the first sentence right below that, it says, we have confirmed with the distributor of the election vote machines could be delivered. I would prefer the word would be delivered. Okay.
It says could, which leaves question marks. And again, once again,
okay,
if they deliver these to us on Sunday before the election, it may not meet our needs in terms of our schedule to unpack them and program them and test them and distribute those to the right poll sites.
I'll finish your sentence. Could be delivered and up and running before the general election. I think it's a little bit misleading that you quote this and you say the other way. You didn't include the manager's comment that it could be, we have confirmed it could be delivered. Now, would be, could be, whatever you want to say, but when he says he confirmed it could be, I think it was a little bit disingenuous. And the other thing is that this group, that CTCL, Tabitha, you've dealt with them for how many years or not?
Sorry, I had to unmute my phone. I have dealt with them probably for at least 5 or 6 years, I would say.
Have they ever provided equipment or grant or guidance or anything that you've used before?
They provide us with a lot of tools that we utilize that save us from having to buy outside software. Anything from we could put in information on what all is on our ballot and estimate how long it'll take somebody to fill out a ballot, how long our lines might be, things like that. We utilize tools like that. We have utilized some of their training options like cybersecurity training, things like that. But they have not offered a grant. Like I said when I was talking earlier, this is brand new. We've never seen this before in the entire time I've been in elections. This is not something we've ever dealt with before, that a grant came from someplace other than a government entity.
When they supplied you tools and guidance and training tools and everything else, did they say that it only had to be used in that year and you could not use them after that?
No, and in fact, I would just mention that the email that I got more recently does offer some clarifications to some of the questions that Commissioner Howell had. So if it's okay, I would actually like to read a sentence from that. It says the FAQ lists examples of covered expenses, but it is not an exhaustive list. We've fielded questions about voting booths, which is a kind of a terminology for voting machines or paper ballot stations, whatever. Photocopiers, better ventilation for your polling places, more secure doors for your warehouses, trailers to transport election day supplies, power generators, nonpartisan newspaper ads, postage envelopes. And the answer is yes, that's all covered, exclamation point.
Okay.
So to me, the things that we have, they just clarified that all those things would be covered. Just because we would use it for this year doesn't mean we can't continue using it after this year, is what they just put in writing in an email to me clarifies earlier today.
Okay.
So I hope that with those questions.
That helps a little bit. Yep. Okay. Commissioner Cruz?
Chairman, I hear constantly from commissioners screaming about spending taxpayer dollars, and now we're receiving a private grant that is not taxpayer dollars to help secure an election that will allow for shorter wait times for people who want to vote. I feel like not accepting this grant is an act of voter suppression, and I really feel like we have a right and we have a duty to ensure that people who want to vote in person can do that safely and securely. We have to social distance. We have to wear masks. We have to do these things that are unprecedented now, and this will allow us to have shorter wait times at more locations with more machines. I just feel like screaming about spending taxpayer dollars, and now we're screaming about taking private donations, is ridiculous. I I want to know, Mr. Papoon, do we have to have a motion? I mean, I think the other thing that's really important is that our CFO is the most cautious person. I mean, even almost to a fault. And I love you, and I say that with the most respect that I can. But we have an incredibly competent staff who has vetted this, who has taken the time to ensure that I don't believe that anyone, our election commissioner, our county manager, our CFO, I don't believe any one of these people wants to put our county at risk in any way, shape, or form. I think that's apparent from every single time that Lindsay is up on the podium talking about don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So if anybody was skeptical of this, it would be her, and she has given us the green light. So back to my original question to our county counselor, do we have to have a motion to accept this, given our county manager has authority to accept this grant under emergency?
Well, the strict answer to your question, Commissioner, is no. There does not have to be a vote to use this money. It's already gone through the process. The manager used his authority to authorize the grant. It's gone through the vetting process, like you say. It's gone through all of Lindsay's checks and balances. No, it doesn't. Action doesn't have to be taken. Now, could the county commission overrule that action with a majority vote? Absolutely, if they wanted to. But no action has to be taken unless the commission wants to do it. So.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm finished,
Okay.
thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. My only concern about this is who's funding it. I think any American should be concerned if Mark Zuckerberg is trying to go around the country giving money to election offices. He's a major founder in that organization with the funding. Generally, these grants that we accept, and I have no trouble with accepting grants. We do that a lot. And I would rather accept a grant than use property tax dollars. My issue is this organization and being funded, as reported by the Wichita Eagle, by Mark Zuckerberg. And that is why I am not supportive or comfortable with it. And you can try to change the narrative, but at the end of the day, Zuckerberg is a major founder or donor to this organization, and that should be unsettling to any voter in our county.
Commissioner Cruz.
I think it's ironic that people are using Facebook now to buy paid advertisements for their campaigns, but don't want to accept funds that are going to help us secure a safe election for every single person wanting to vote.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you. This is a question for Manager Stoltz or possibly Commissioner Lehman. Do we believe we have a safe and secure election right now? If we don't accept this money, are there concerns about our safety or security of this election?
I'll let you go.
Sorry. No, we can conduct this election, and we are prepared to do so. As I mentioned at the beginning of my comments, there is a difference between what I would come to when you're in trying, troubling times and ask for versus if someone's giving us an opportunity. And I will reiterate that I fully respect the Commission's authority on this decision, and we will abide by whatever your decision is. Of course, we would love to utilize this money if that is the will of the board, but also we will continue the direction we were headed before this money came to our attention, if that is your will as well. So.
Well, since I have her on the line, can you speculate or guesstimate what's our number of voters we're expecting to vote in this election? Do we have an idea what we're estimating at this point?
It's a little bit hard to know. All the numbers for this year have been completely up and down. I would say we should expect probably close to somewhere between 220 to 250,000 people to cast a ballot is my guess. And that's a lot. That is a lot, especially when only 85,000 people have requested a ballot by mail. So that is still a lot of in-person voting that we're going to be doing. And I don't think we're going to get a significant increase in the amount of people who are requesting a ballot by mail at this point, because our numbers are just trickling down to about, I think, around 1,000 requests a day that we're receiving, as what my staff's reporting to me. And so we are not seeing a significant increase as we come into those final days. I think people have been saturated with the request, and if they intended to request a ballot by mail, they would have already done so.
So if we have 150,000 voters go to poll sites on election day, if that was to happen, what would our wait times be approximately, do you think?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Of course, we also calculate in that we expect to probably have, tens of thousands of people vote early as well. So we would take more than that 150,000 off before election day. But if we have 100,000 people vote in person, it's going to be a stretch for us. We're not, with this equipment, I want to be very, very clear. We're not looking at adding more polling places at this point. It's too late. What we're looking at being able to do is potentially put more polling states, more voting machines, say, at Intrastate Arena and at some of our larger early voting sites and things like that, and having more backups available than we have now, so that if a machine goes down, we're not perpetuating it longer. We can at least replace it and still continue voting. So I just want to be very clear, we're not talking this would facilitate, it's too late in the game to add more polling places. And we don't have the staff to do that, even if it wasn't at this point. But we just facilitate adding machines at some of those locations, and then having backups available to us if machines go down.
I can't give you a reference as to where I'm hearing this, but I think I've heard it numerous places that we are setting records in terms of mail ballot applications, and for an election like this, we're setting records in terms of numbers of people who are requesting mail ballots. Is that true?
Yes, we are. We have, for instance, in 2016, we mailed out 65,000 ballots, and we already have 85,000 requested. Of course, our number of registered voters has increased significantly. We are approaching 316,000 registered voters at this point. So, those numbers are percentage-wise. I think we're at about 20. Last time I looked, I think we're at about 27% of total registered voters have requested a ballot by mail. To put that into perspective, however, Johnson County has already processed, I think, 135,000 requests, and yes, they have 430,000 registered voters, so they have quite a few more than we do. And they still have a backlog. They just said they have boxes of applications still to process and are receiving them. So the tone towards mail ballot voting here in Sedgwick County is definitely different than it is in other places. So while we are seeing record numbers, it is not the numbers that I expected to see. Coming into this when we did our budgets and things like that for this year. But that does not mean that we are, as has been previously stated, we received $400,000 from through the Secretary of State from the federal government that has been allocated. Most of what's left on that, I believe, is things like postage, increased postage for, because we had significantly more ballots by mail in the primary than we budgeted for and things like that. So there are expenses like that, cleaning of polling places for the general election. Those have not been expended yet. That those funds are allocated to those sorts of things.
About what percentage of, I'm sorry, I'm trying to, you're fine. About what percentage of our voters will vote advanced in person ahead of Tuesday? What percentage of our voters will potentially vote on advanced early voting at some of our advanced sites?
We normally see around 60% of our voters vote a combination of in person and by mail. What we are seeing across the nation, I will just be honest, has me a little perturbed on early voting. It's great that we are seeing locations that hours before they open, they have hundreds of people in line to vote. And most of those states are states that only allow one or two early voting locations per county. So we are definitely in a much different scenario than a lot of those states are in. But until we get into early voting and see how many people are choosing to utilize that, it's just, this year is just so unknown. I can't even begin to guess what we're going to see. So it's just I'm sorry, I can't be more educated on that, but it just seems to be the year of, just like everything else, that we just don't know what we're what to expect.
With respect to the advanced voting, there's an abundance of equipment available for the advanced voting sites. Is that correct? As we deploy things on election day, But there's available equipment. You could relocate that, if you will. So I would say there would be an abundance of equipment available to those advanced poll sites, because there's only a dozen of them compared to the 80 plus poll sites we have on election day. Is that correct?
I apologize. Some of what you were saying, I was having trouble hearing. If I'm understanding your question correctly, you're saying what this would be to allow us to have an abundance of equipment.
I'm saying with our current resources, we have an abundance of equipment available for our advanced voting poll sites that happened before Tuesday. We have plenty of equipment for the advanced sites, regardless of this grant.
I would not say plenty from what we're seeing across the country. I would say we are utilizing every voting machine we own, and if one goes down, it's going to affect us. And we do happen to be holding back to use the backups, but quite frankly, what we're doing is we're utilizing the touch screens because they're not counting ballots. We can reuse those from early voting to election day. So the machines that we send out to Intrust Bank Arena, we will then reuse those as backup machines on election day. So we will pretty much have no equipment in our warehouse on election day. It's going to be pretty sparse.
Yeah,
we have some set for backup, but if we have too many go down, I think we're going to have maybe 20 set for backup. Everything else will be deployed.
What I was referring to was the advanced voting, the in-person voting that happens ahead of Tuesday. For about 5 days or so, we have advanced voting in a select number of poll sites. We have abundance of equipment for those 5 days of advanced voting. Is that correct?
Those machines, we're most of those sites maxing out the space, but there are several sites that we could send more equipment, like say the extension office, the machinist hall, that have more space if we had more equipment. So we have enough compared to what we've used in the past. And I would like to clarify, I will give you the scenario. I like to compare 16 to 220. And you know very well that we've bought new voting equipment. We've added 20 polling places since 2016. So we are in a much better place than we were in 2016 to serve our voters well. Again, until we know who's going to show up when and where, it's just very unknown. So I hesitate to guarantee anything. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I have one more question for you, and then one for Lindsay, and then I'll be done with my questioning. So my final question for you, Commissioner Lehman, is: do you believe we are disenfranchising any voter in Sedgwick County or suppressing any voter in Sedgwick County, or does everybody who has a desire to vote in Sedgwick County, are we accommodating them in their desire to vote?
Okay, I apologize again. What I'm hearing through the phone line is kind of cutting in and out, and so I believe what you're asking me is, do I believe if we don't accept this grant, we're going to disenfranchise voters with the budget and everything in plan as we have it right now?
That is correct. Is every voter in Sedgwick County afforded the opportunity to vote, or are we disenfranchising people who want to vote who otherwise cannot vote because of this grant?
Well, again, that's going to come back to my answer of there are so many unknowns with this. I don't believe we're going to disenfranchise voters. I hope we're not going to. But again, we don't know what the lines are going to be. We don't know how many people. The rhetoric has changed so much around this election and the conversation and people. I spent all my morning today responding to emails today, and multiple of those have been people who had already applied for a ballot requesting to cancel it. Things like this. Things are moving so quickly in this election for us that it's very difficult for me. I believe that the plan we have in place will work. Absolutely. I don't believe we're going to just disenfranchise people by not taking this money. But could we make it easier for them with the money? Yes, we could. But again, at this point, that's not my decision, and I will leave that up to you all. I've said my piece, and you know my opinion, and I'll just stop talking.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Lehman, for your answers. And let me just answer the question for you the way I believe that I would have to hear the answer. That is, we're not disenfranchising any voter in Sedgwick County. There is no voter suppression. Everybody who wants to vote, we welcome them. There's lots of ways to vote. There's a lot of effort to communicate on how to vote. And I believe we're doing a good job. And let me credit your office that we're doing a good job of communicating to the people who want to vote how to do that. And we provide opportunities multiple ways. And so I don't want anybody to walk away saying that this $816,000 is somehow going to suppress voters or disenfranchise voters. I don't think that's the message. We have a safe and secure election plan. It's a strategic plan, and we're doing a great job. My last question for CFO is, again, I'd like you to say, are you 1,000% sure that we're not going to have to pay any of this money based on this plan? Because we don't have Wood O'Brien. Are you telling me that there's no way we're going to have to pay this money back?
Based on the plans I have seen to date, I have no concerns that we will have to repay it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you. Tabitha, will this make it easier for your staff to conduct an election?
Of course, money always makes things easier.
The one
But
thing.
it will, to be honest, I mean, if we're just going to be 100% honest and laid out there, that it will, there are some things that will complicate it. You know, adding machines, as Commissioner Howell talked about, we have discussed that internally and how we would do that. We have discussed it with the vendor on timing of getting them. They would get here, later this month, obviously, because it's already October. We would be scrambling, definitely. But I just want to make sure I'm telling both sides of it. Yes, it will help, but it will also complicate some things just because of the timing of it. And again, I'll take responsibility for that with not following up on my emails when I was in the hospital. But I just want to make sure I'm very forthright on both sides of that one.
Okay, so the additional, a couple of weeks ago, I asked about whether we were communicating with all sectors of our community around where our ballot boxes were, how they were going to be able to, know where to go, know how to do this. And I was told that there was no money to translate any of this stuff into Spanish or Vietnamese or any other languages. And so this will allow us, since there is money now, to translate into other languages where our boxes are, where our voting locations are. So I think it's important that we make sure that we didn't have translation services or communications a plan in place. I think that's important to point out. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For our CFO, do we receive any grants from, other than other government agencies? Do we get 50, 60 grants a year, it seems like? I can recall that we've get a number of people that donate to ComCare and so forth. Do we routinely get grants from private organizations?
Commissioner, I wouldn't say we routinely get grants, but we do routinely get donations from private folks for ComCare, for maybe suicide-related events. For the sheriff, certainly they get a number. The fire district gets a lot. I think Commissioner Cruz had asked a similar question yesterday, and I think the closest thing we have seen in terms of a formal grant from a private entity was the Arts Council back in 2018 that provided $50,000 for that big turtle sculpture at the art park. So I'm not sure I'd say it's routine to accept grants, but it's certainly not outside of what we've done.
Very good, thank you. Well, I was a little bit concerned, honestly, when I read the newspaper. But I've talked to Dion, he's in the back of the room, so it's, he knows that I've talked to him. The Eagle's job is to sell newspapers, and sometimes they sensationalize what they put in order to sell newspapers. So I understand that. Whenever that Dion puts something in the paper, I usually talk to him about it because it causes us some concern, and identifying Mark Zuckerberg in the article has caused concern from the public, as I've received voicemails and feedback from several people that were concerned about that. But I don't know that it diminishes the fact that we can offset future purchases and things that can make our election run smoother right now by accepting $800,000 and some $1,000. I know, as Commissioner Howell stated, that yes, we do have money in the budget to conduct elections, but if we can do a better job of conducting elections, I don't see a problem with that. We receive funds from a lot of different sources, and so I know that Commissioner Howell wants us to go on record for something, and I had a lot of concerns. Commissioner O'Donnell and I talked about it Friday. That when I read the newspaper article, and it doesn't tell the whole story. So I don't see any reason we would not accept something that has no strings attached whatsoever, that will not affect the outcome of the election, that will not make anything worse. It'll make it better. It's going to, our election commissioner thinks it's a good idea. Our CFO thinks it's a good idea. If this had any chance whatsoever of affecting the outcome of the election, I'd be completely against it. But I can't see any place that it's going to affect the outcome of the election. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for our CFO, or this might be for Manager Stoltz, but either one of you can answer this. And when we have accepted that type of a grant or donation in the past, we have, as a board, considered that and made a formal action to receive those donations. Is that correct?
We absolutely do, sir. And to Commissioner Dennis's point before, this is very unusual how this has happened.
Yeah,
But
I find that troubling. I have one question over the plan, and maybe you can answer this one, but there's an asterisk by take that back, never mind on that. Ballot drop boxes, installation, security camera fees. Are we planning to put security cameras on these drop boxes?
Tabitha or Anna, do you want to talk about security of drop boxes?
Yes, Anna Meyerhoff, Central Services Manager. We are following the guidance from the Department of Homeland Security and the Secretary of State's office, and there will be a security camera on every single ballot drop box.
So once again, we're going to have this done in 26 days. Okay. I think the biggest reason to vote for this probably is for future elections. It has less to do with this election and possibly would enhance future elections with additional equipment. But I don't think there's any way for us to really absorb this $816,000 and do it in a way that's going to substantially impact the general election of 2020 for Sedgwick County. But I'll tell you what, I've heard three commissioners make comments that they're supporting this idea. So let's just cut to the chase. I'd like to make a motion. Do we accept the grant from Center for Tech and Civic Life for the purposes that they've outlined in the amount of $816,458?
It's been a motion and a second. Is this another motion that you make that you can vote against?
That's all right. I plan on voting no.
You might have been full disclosure as you've been failing to disclose.
That's fine. I think you all know from my comments, I'm not
agree.
supporting this.
I
I do
agree.
want to have a vote on record that I'm not supporting this. I think that we need to be on record.
That's what you should announce, that I want to make a motion for something that I don't want to vote for.
Okay.
That would be a more honest motion, is if you let the public and everybody know you're making a motion that you're going to vote against.
I'll be
It's
glad
not
to
your
explain
first
my
time.
motion when
That's fine.
after we get a second, but I wanted to make the motion
You
first.
got a second. You got a second.
Thank you. Well, then I'll just stay up front. I plan on voting no. I think I've made my case.
Okay.
And
I think it'd be helpful if you announce before you make a motion.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chairman.
Been a motion and a second to accept the grant. Madam Clerk, I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
No.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chairman Meitzner?
Aye. Motion carries.